I want to talk about conflict because when you have a team which is high performing, one of the things you want to be very careful is that you don't want to derail the performance because of some tensions, disagreements, and conflicts. And definitely a high performing team will have some disagreements. That's why they are high performers, because they go for creativity, innovation, they do things very innovatively. Definitely that leads to conflict and disagreement. The question is, what should be done to equip team members to turn conflicts into opportunities, to know how to get along with people that disagree with them?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first thing I would say is there's different types of conflicts inside of teams, right? I think all human conflict, but certainly all team-based conflict, is going to fall into one of two categories. It's going to be task-focused conflict, which is fine, and we'll talk about how to leverage that in a second, or it's going to be personal conflict. Now, as a leader, or even as an influential teammate, personal conflict, that needs to be squashed immediately. Right? If somebody is just being overly toxic, overly negative, you need to call that person out in front of the room and address that negative behavior. If two people are constantly sort of at each other, you need to pull them aside eventually and have a one-on-one intervention to kind of solve that, right? And in doing so, you build a psychological safe culture just because you're saying we don't do that, right? Then there's task-focused conflict. And what's tricky is that task-focused conflict, that's fighting over ideas. That's multiple smart people having multiple different possible solutions to the problem we're facing as a team. I want that, because my best chance of having the right answer, finding the best answer, I should say, not necessarily the right, but the best option, is to have lots of different options. So I want that. But then as a leader, I have to teach the team how to fight right, which is a bit of what your question was getting at. But I didn't want to make people think like, oh, that means I don't have to address personal conflict. You do. But on the task-focused conflict side, what I really need is I need to teach the team. I'm like a referee as a leader. I need to teach the team how to fight right. And my first big rule, and probably if you do this, you'll find rules that work for your team elsewhere too. My first big rule is, when we're in conflict over an idea, we don't criticize the person, for sure. We don't criticize the idea. We question the assumptions behind it. Like, the way to have a proper task-focused conflict is not to get people to defend their idea, but to defend the assumptions behind it. So what this looks like in practice is not like, AZ, you come to me, you've got an idea for something, and I just think, oh my gosh, that's too expensive and it doesn't actually pay off. It's a ridiculous solution because of how expensive it is. I don't say that. Right? I don't say we don't have the budget for that. That'll never work. I say, oh, that's an interesting idea. Okay, let me think through this. Help me out though. What do you think it would cost to make that idea a reality? Have you given any thought to that? Right? If not, okay. And then, do we have that money? Is there a payoff there? Like, I guide you through that set of assumptions. Or maybe it's a hours, a manpower issue, like a labor issue. How many people do you think you need on a team to pull off that initiative? Have you researched that? Do you know that? Right? So when two smart people disagree and you've got conflict over an idea, most of the time, there are fringe cases, but most of the time it's not because one of them is smart and the other has turned their brain off and is just an idiot in this area. It's not that. It's that they're both operating logically and intelligently from a different set of assumptions. So as a leader, what we need to do to leverage this conflict, to keep it from getting personal and to help find the best idea, is we need to examine the assumptions behind the idea that everybody has. And then we need to go figure out which set of assumptions is accurate. What is that going to cost? And is there going to be a payoff for that? Or is a different option maybe not as good an option, but it's the option we can afford right now, right? Or whatever it is. So so that's what we do. We question those assumptions. And by the way, just because you can't think of the assumptions doesn't mean you shouldn't necessarily be questioning the assumptions. I got a trick for that too. And that is that one of my favorite questions to ask people as we're brainstorming through different ideas and judging them and teasing them out is, as somebody submits their possible solution, I'll just say, okay, what would have to be true for that idea to be our best option? In other words, let's think through this, right? Tell me your assumptions.
Yeah, I love one thing. I want to talk to you a little bit more on that one. One of the pushbacks I get from high performers is that they don't want this friction within their teams, and they want to avoid any kind of conflict. What you're talking about is, if you make it conversational, if you ask questions, because the conflict and the friction comes if you attack their assumptions, if you attack their proposal. But if you ask, like you said, what made you to think that? Have you considered this? What I tell leaders is, even if you know the answer to that and this idea doesn't work, like you said, if the budget doesn't allow you, or this doesn't align with the mission of the team, it's not a good idea to push back immediately. You can explore with them, make it conversational, and at least take 1 hour or 1 day. If you want to push back, if you want to have that conversation to push back on that idea, at least take a break, think about it. The idea is, if you push back immediately, next time they may not engage with you and disagree with you. But if you take time, think about it, come back again, and tell them the flaws of their ideas. After asking them questions, they see that you have taken your time. They think that it's a psychologically safe environment.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was gonna say exactly, right? Like the two things the high performers, they don't want to be in an argument. That, it's emotionally draining. I get that, and then they don't want to feel like they weren't heard. It's okay, right? Most people can live with if my idea was heard, if it was weighed, if it was measured, and it was found wanting, that's okay. I was still heard. Where a lot of dysfunction happens on teams is that people don't actually feel heard before they're rejected. And so, as a leader, even if, and this is hard because I'm just gonna be real for a second. I mean, I've been real this whole time, but here's another example. As a leader, some ideas are dumb. Like, you're going to hear ideas from teammates that are like, that's the stupidest thing I have ever heard. But you still have to make sure that person feels heard, and you bring them to a place through questions, through asking them the assumptions, through really considering it, where they realize, okay, actually, yeah, that idea wasn't worth nearly as much as I was excited about. I just got overly enthusiastic about it. I got too emotionally attached to it, right? You have to bring them to that place. Otherwise, you're not going to hear the next idea, and the next idea might be brilliant.
Yep. It could change the trajectory of that team. That's the emotional intelligence part. You hear a bad idea from your perspective. It could be a great idea if you explore it. But from the top of your mind, this is a crazy idea. You could push back. What you're doing is killing innovation and creativity and destroying this safe cultural environment where people are willing to disagree with you, come up with ideas. You may not agree with you.